1 year ago, when my friend Freddie bought these two Nobles, I had no idea he was going to give them to me for a project car. After tearing them down, finding a bunch of problems with them, fixing some fiberglass, taking apart the burn car, and salvaging every part that we could from it, it's time to take these frames apart and put these frames together as one.
Welcome back to the channel and welcome back to the Noble M400 build. Before we get started with today's video, if you guys could hit the thumbs up button, subscribe to the channel, it really helps me out. In today's episode, we are going to cut the front end off of our burn car and use it to repair the front end on our Noble M400. But there is a major problem. I don't have anywhere to measure from. So this is my tram gauge. I use this on the Evo, and as you can see here, it's basically a point-to-point measurement. What you do is you find the measurements between point A and point B, and then you go to point C and point D, which should be exactly the same, just in a different angle, and they should measure out just right. If you see here, I put that there, it doesn't measure out just right. So I can't even do that on the Noble. There's no way to measure point to point because there's nothing there that is exactly the same as it is on the other side. The bars were set up in something called a jig, and that's what we're gonna go over here now, and I'm gonna show you how I'm gonna jig this car up. Let's get jiggy with it. Let me show you where I found my point of references at. These are where the seat bolts to. So you can see here, there's a hole here, and there's two more on this side as well as the passenger side. And they are in the exact same place. So I think that what I can do is bolt a piece of metal up to this piece here and then build a structure that goes out to the front. Let me show you what I'm gonna do in the front. With the back of the jig bolting up to where the seats are, I will run some bars underneath here, and up until this point, this is pretty flat. But right here, this is where the frame starts to kick up a little bit. So what I'll have to do to make sure that this doesn't move and it stays in exactly the same place where I want it to be is I will either have to weld something to the bars and maybe even make a bar come up here where I can bolt it to the suspension pickup points. I'll probably end up doing both. Like I always say, that's a lot of work. Let's get started.
With a plan in place how I was going to build this jig, I started by marking my metal and making some precise cuts. This is really important because I want everything to be exact. The more precise this is, the better it is when it comes to lining up these parts. Now I remove the excess urethane so that I can get to the bare metal. This again is extremely important when trying to be precise. I want these bars to lay flat against the frame so that I have no movement at all. With my crossbars clamped into place, I now mark out the seat bolt locations. Now I measure my crossbars so that I'm able to make some braces to hold these in place.
Off camera, I just messed around with this welder, and guys, dude, this is the best welder that I have ever used, and I'm not building this up. I'm not fluffing any of this up, but H&S Auto Shot, thank you guys so much because you're making builds like this possible, and we're gonna be able to do some really amazing stuff. That's enough talking. Let's get to welding.
Now I build the front structure of the jig to weld to the front of the frame of this vehicle. This will allow me to slide this back into place and bolt my seat locations, giving me the exact spot where this frame came apart at. Now I build these little legs so that I'm able to move the lift arms in and out. That way when I cut the front of this thing off, I'm able to slide that out and then take the center section and lift it up in the air.
Now that everything is welded in place, it's time to set this jig on the ground and see how it moves, see what happens. I do know that the center between here is a little higher and the ground slopes here and slopes in the back. So it might teeter-totter a little bit, but that's good because then we can test out how rigid this actually is. And we're about to make touchdown. Sweet. Let's see what she's doing. That's pretty solid. So now all we got to do is cut the front end off of this one, cut the front end off of that one, and then mate them together. Real easy. Nope. It's the next day. We built our jig setup with our H&S welder over here. This thing is amazing. It made quick work of making this piece here in the center. So let me explain to you guys exactly what I was trying to do by building a jig setup to hold this in place. Now, if you look here in the front, you can see I have a bar there. We have two bars going back this way, and then underneath there's stilts underneath these major supporting points. Also, I have welded these bars that go back to this direction here to here and here because I plan on cutting either here or closer to here. Now back here, as you go back, you can see we have another brace there. We have another brace there. We also have a support here, along with our braces going to our seat locations. And if you can tell, I've drilled these out perfectly. There is no slop, no play. Everything is clamped into place. This should bolt right up to our other car. So when this bolts up, basically that will give me the exact location that the front of this needs to be in. If there's any differences, we will see it right away in the gap between where the welds will go. That's a lot of work. Like I always say, let's get started because it's late in the day. I got a little bit of a late start today and I plan on having this thing welded on to that car before I leave. Let's get started.
There's just something so fun about cutting apart a chassis, and especially when you can do it without remorse.
There is no going back now. We have achieved what we wanted to achieve by separating this piece. As you can see, it kind of kicked back a little bit. That was the goal of doing it this way. So that way, whenever I go to put the body back on this car, the bars where I have here braced, I actually clamp to those too, and that'll pull it down in a little bit. But let's separate this. Okay. Hopefully it's not as hard as that was. Okay, here we go, and sweet. All right, guys. I didn't think this through. I don't know how I'm gonna get this out of here. I've got the 2-post lift underneath the sides here, and now what I'm gonna do is just lift this thing up, and I'll probably just slide this piece out if that works. So let's check this out. Guys, we just cut a car, literally just cut a car into thirds. I'm not gonna lie, that was really fun. I've never done this before, and I'm a little nervous. I don't know where, that's loud. I don't know where to stop. Well, that worked. Good. Nothing fell. It's good. Okay. So now this gives me an option. I can either cut this closer to the front here and put in all my pieces there, and that would be good, or I can go further back and attach it at these bars. One of the things I noticed about this car is that in certain areas, like right over here, they have spray foam. Let me grab the piece that I actually saw it on. Somewhere over here it is. Okay. So if you see here, we have spray foam inside of one of the bars. This one is the one that actually went across the dash area. So that actually sat in here like that. And you can see, I don't know if you can see it on camera right now because it's pretty far away, but lots of spray foam in there. All right, well, we've separated it. Now it's time to get this front end apart and decide where we're gonna cut this car. I'm kind of leaning more towards doing this section here. And if I do that section there, I can reinforce the car pretty good. So I'm not too worried about where that goes from there, but we just cut a car in thirds. I'm a little scared right now. I'm not gonna lie. This is way more work than I thought it was gonna be. All right, well, good thing is that's staying still and in place. Hopefully it stays still and in place the whole time.
Now I try to cut these things as precise as possible. I want to save as much of the old metal so that I don't have big gaps when going to weld these two pieces back together.
It's the next day and everything has changed on this vehicle now. I have got the donor frame all cut apart. I have the piece that I need and I ended up cutting a little further than I thought I was gonna cut. But there's good reason for that. I'm gonna take you guys on a little adventure on something that I overlooked. I like to do something around the shop called stare time. And it's kind of funny because literally that's what it is. I stare at a vehicle and try to evaluate every single thing that is wrong with this car. Sometimes it's 30 minutes, sometimes it's 2 hours, sometimes it's weeks. Sometimes I just need to really absorb what is going on with the vehicle. And I'm really glad that I did it this time because initially I was gonna make my cut right about here, removing those parts. It's a good thing that I didn't. Let me show you why. This is the M400 frame that we are going to be using the donor frame pieces right here to save. And the reason we're saving this frame is because it's just crash damage in the front. There's no fire damage that would have weakened any of these pieces. Now let's talk about what I found the other day while staring at the car. So if you can see here, I'm not sure if it's going to be very visible, but you can kind of see like a tire mark right in this area here where it's a little bit darker. What happened is our control arm snapped, and when the control arm snapped, the wheel came back, hitting right there. Not only did it hit right there, if you remember from the previous videos, you saw where this pillar on the body piece ripped off and literally yeeted the door off the car. So when I started looking at this, I started noticing something right here, and it has a nice dent right there. So basically what's happening is this bar got pushed in that direction, and that's the bar that we actually ended up saving over here on our donor front clip. So the donor front clip right there has that bar intact. Everything is straight. It should be good to go. But I'm really glad that I actually made the cuts right there, because if I wouldn't have made those cuts, I would have found that after the fact, and I possibly would have cut that bar to just kind of hack it off in place. I don't know, maybe I would have cut here, but that would have had to be something that had to be cut, measured, welded back on again, and that would have just been a lot more work and frustration. But thanks to stair time, we're good. So now we got to make a lot of progress. We need to get the whole front end cut off this car. All the wiring, the tubes, everything else that is in the car, that's got to come out just like it did on the other one, except we have to make sure that we don't break anything on this one, because these parts are all good and they're going to be used again. Some of them will be replaced and some of them will be used again. Now, like I always say, that's a lot of work. I love showing progress on cars. I love showing you guys major progress on cars. Let's get started, because it's late in the day again. Got a late start, had to refresh the welding bottles. It's gonna be a lot of cutting, a lot of grinding, and a lot of welding. Let's get started.
As I removed all of the components on this car, I quickly realized how much stuff I actually had to take off. And this was really exhausting, because some of this stuff was definitely going to have to be reused. Now I removed the fuse panel along with all of the wiring that was underneath the dash. In the back of the car, I disconnect all of the AN lines along with the brake lines as well.
Oh, yucky. Well, that's all over the floor. My goodness. We can 100% simplify this wiring harness, and that might not be a bad option. Holy moly. All right, let's get this front end cut off, because I am losing steam. This car is kicking my butt. I am not using this wiring harness, so I'm not gonna fight this thing anymore. I've literally spent the last 30 minutes trying to get this thing to move around, and it is impossible. You would literally have to de-pin a ton of stuff to get this thing to come through. So, wiring harness delete is complete. Well, it's the next day. I am extremely tired still, because that was a lot of work. There was so much stuff going on in this car, and I decided, you know what? I need to take a break, step back from this, reevaluate some things, and just come back with a fresh head. Technically, I have a fresh head, I got a fresh haircut. But anyway, I looked at this car so much, I thought I could rip right through this, pull all the parts off of it, cut it off, get it welded in one day. What I didn't realize is that I was working on very little sleep, because I went to go get some parts from a car that is not on the channel yet, which I'm staring at, and it's awesome. Can't wait to show it to you guys. But now is the time today where we are going to cut the front of this off and weld the other piece on. I am super excited to get that started because there is a lot of work left to do on this car. And I want to make sure I get this thing ready because the next step is going to be fitting everything up, making sure everything goes into place where it should be. And not only am I going to be doing that, I am going to be powder coating this whole frame. I'm not going to tell you guys the color yet because that's going to be a big surprise. It's going to help make the other colors pop. I'm also going to be doing some stuff with the floors and a brand new wiring harness. That's right, I'm going to rewire the entire car. The reason being is every time I looked at the wiring harness from the previous job, I just thought to myself, this is going to take 10 times longer than it would take if I just built this from scratch. So with the help of some friends, I will probably be getting a wiring harness here very soon, and I'll be getting started on that. But for now, let's get started. Let's cut the front of this car off. Let's weld it on. And yeah, let's keep going. I need energy. I'm running out fast. Energy.
The time was finally here, and I was finally able to cut away all of the damaged parts on the old chassis. I'm not gonna lie, guys, this has been the hardest challenge yet. I was so tired from removing all of the components of this car. We are basically starting from new, but the good news is everything went really well, and the only thing left to do now is build a brand new car.
All right, everything is cut free. This is the last cut, and the front of this car should fall right off. Should, keyword. I'll stand to the side because I don't want to get hurt. It's like, it just brings pure joy to do something like this. I have no idea why, but this is really fun. Time to separate this thing at the lift here. Bringing it up. Hopefully this thing doesn't fall. I should have put a strap on there. I got it pretty far back. We're good. We're good. Until we aren't. One more lock. There we go. Would you look at that? I mean, would you just look at that? Dude, this is awesome. This is major progress. I am very satisfied that I finally have this thing cut off. And not only that, looking at this thing, it is very square. I'm super happy with that. I've also measured this, lengthwise to make sure nothing is dipped or turned or bent, but you got a little bit of warping from some heat, but other than that, this thing is ready to go. I need to clean up these edges, clean off all of these parts where I have cut everything off, and then it's time to mount this guy up, and I'm super excited about that. That's still a lot of work to do, but whew, it's getting late. I don't know if you can see, sun is going down. I'm not leaving until this thing is finished. Let's keep moving.
This was such an exciting and monumental moment. I was going to be able to mount the M12 chassis to the M400 chassis, making these one, and it felt like it had been forever, but now we were finally here.
Let me explain to you how excited I am right now. I just set it in place, pushed it around a little bit before I turned the camera on, and it is like literally spot on with the bolts. Everything lines up, and I am exhausted, but so excited that this actually worked. I mean, oh, this has been a extreme challenge. I cannot tell you guys how hard this actually was. There was a lot of trimming, fitting, and cutting, but enough of that. Let me show you exactly how good this looks right now. So let me explain what is going on here. It is sitting on the jig. The front end is welded to the jig. I have the front supported a little bit here because the floor is not level, so it kind of makes this front end dip a little bit. So I wanted to level that out. But if you see here, I have clamps holding it here, and I have a clamp holding it there. These are keeping the bars basically level with the bottom of this floor because the bottom of the floor is perfectly flush at that point. But if you look right here, I mean, this lines up so good. A little bit of a gap on that bottom one, not a big deal. Over here, a little bit of a gap, but I knew there was gonna be one there. I will be doing some reinforcement there. This is not bad at all here, and the same thing over here and on the side over there. So let me show you what's going on in the inside and how good this jig actually worked. So as you can see, I have a bolt here. I have this hole open and it is perfectly lined up. I have a bolt here, and then this hole right here is perfectly lined up as well. But that's not all. Let's take a look at the other side. And now you can see this one lines up perfectly here, and this one lines up perfectly here, as well as these two bolts bolted down, holding it in. That is freaking awesome. I can't believe that went together that well. I need to do a couple more quick measurements. I'll show you those right now. So just to double check here, I ran my tape measure and it is going to that bar right up there, and it is back here. And as you can see, I am just before a 33 and a half. Let's take this to the exact same side, put it in the same place. I used the very edge of that bar right there, and look at that, dude. Let's weld because it's getting late. I'm tired and I need to get this thing welded up because there's a lot more work needed to be done on this. And I have a very little bit of time because this is going to be this year's SEMA car. If I haven't said that to you guys yet, what are we like? We're less than 6 months out. I mean, it's easy. We'll have it ready in no time. I mean, last year we were done with plenty of time to spare. I mean, the truck came, we pushed the car onto the truck, the cars, and then we left the next day and slept on the plane the whole way on each other's shoulders because we were exhausted because we edited until 4 in the morning. Let's not do that again this year. I'm probably gonna do that again this year. I think we're probably both gonna do that again this year. All right, time to weld. I'm getting loopy. That was an insane amount of work. We did this all in 1 week. We cut the front end off of this car. We cut the front end off the burn car M12. We salvaged every single part we could off of that one. And then we came over here and stripped this down to the bare frame. Now the front end of the M12 is welded onto our good chassis. Next step for me is putting all the suspension on, putting the engine in, and then running a wiring harness. We have so much more work we got to do. That's going to have to wait till the next episode. Thank you guys again for watching. Hit that thumbs up button, subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.